My name is Adeline Banes, a doctor who had been on shift for 30 straight hours, working nonstop like a whip-spinning top. I barely managed a few bites at breakfast and lunch, skipped dinner entirely, drank 3 bottles of energy drink, and now my heartbeat pounded violently in my throat like a rabbit thrashing before death. All I wanted was 5 minutes to mindlessly scroll and relax. Even though I was completely exhausted, sleep refused to come. The glow of the screen stabbed at my aching eyes as I swiped through one video after another. Then a particular clip caught my attention. It was another tragedy set in an ancient world. The female lead had been cruelly punished by the male lead because of his favored secondary consort. She endured endless suffering, surviving all 50 trials until her eventual death. Only after she died did the man finally realize he loved her. Together with their spoiled brat son, who had once bullied the heroine as well, they tortured the scheming consort to death. Afterward, the father and son knelt before the heroine's grave, weeping in regret. The heroine's ghost was moved when her husband and son finally came to their senses and avenged her suffering. In the end, she smiled softly and said, "I loved you until the very end. My heart could never bear to hate you, not even for a second." I stared at the smiling woman in white before shouting in anger, "Are you insane? If it were me, I'd stab every single one of them to death with my scalpel." Suddenly, my chest tightened violently. I recognized the sensation instantly. I had seen it countless times in patients. This time, it was happening to me. My phone slipped from my hand. The screen remained lit. As my consciousness faded, my final thought was, damn that trashy short video. It actually killed me. When I opened my eyes again, a deep, piercing pain shot through my knees. They pressed against something hard and freezing cold, the chill creeping into my bones like countless icy needles. I looked down. Gray stone bricks. Old moss-covered tiles lined the floor neatly. I was kneeling. The rough white clothes on my body felt like coarse burlap, scraping my skin raw until it seemed flesh was grinding directly against the stone beneath me. Several people stood nearby. An imposing armchair stood before me, and seated upon it was a man. He wore a black robe, his long hair secured beneath a jade crown. His features were sharp and cold, with a composed, distant expression. His nose was straight, his jawline defined, and his lips set in a firm line. The way he looked at others carried clear indifference and disdain. His gaze settled on me as his lips parted slightly. "Adeline, your jealousy knows no bounds. You framed Helena out of spite. From today onward, you will be confined to the dungeon. Without my permission, you are not allowed to leave." The moment he spoke, a mechanical voice exploded inside my head. "System successfully bound. Welcome host to the world of the ruthless prince's beloved consort." The cheerful electronic tone sounded absurdly festive, like New Year firecrackers going off in my skull. "Your current identity is Crown Princess Adeline Banes, lawful wife of the male lead, Crown Prince Richard Blackthorne. You are currently being punished for framing the favored secondary consort, Helena Williams, and have been ordered to kneel in the dungeon. The current plot progress is 10%. Future plot preview: in 3 days, you will collapse from a high fever and nearly die. Richard will rescue you, but the doctor will inform him that you will no longer be able to conceive. Helena will then frame you for witchcraft. You will be imprisoned and repeatedly tortured, only to be released later due to insufficient evidence. Afterward, your maiden family and son will disown you upon learning that you can no longer secure the prince's favor. Your son will even help bully you and accept Helena as his new mother. You will endure 50 trials and hardships, but the betrayal and abuse will eventually become unbearable, leading you to hang yourself. While your husband and son are preoccupied with making Helena happy, your loyal maid, Jenny, will retrieve your body and secretly bury you deep in the forest, fulfilling your final request. 7 days later, the male lead will discover the truth and be consumed by guilt and regret as he mourns your remains. Eventually, both the male lead and your son will seek vengeance for your suffering, kneeling before your grave and begging for forgiveness. In the end, you will forgive them, even after everything. I lowered my gaze to my hands. They were pale and slender, with rough calluses across the fingertips, as though this body had endured years of labor. I understood instantly. I had transmigrated into that idiotic ancient melodrama. The one where the original heroine is misunderstood by her husband, humiliated, demoted, locked in a dungeon, hated even by her own child, and forced to kneel and beg before the second female lead, before eventually hanging herself. Only after her death, the male lead suddenly regrets everything, kills the secondary consort and the servants responsible, then digs up the heroine's grave while insisting she cannot possibly be dead. The same story where the comments endlessly defend the scumbag husband and ungrateful son. This is absolutely insane. Slowly, I raised my head and examined the man before me. Richard Blackthorne was really handsome, I had to admit that. The kind of face that would cause an entire nurse station to erupt into screams. His entire expression practically screamed, "I am noble. You are beneath me." Though personally, I was more interested in his veins and tendons. They looked extremely easy to puncture. Standing beside him was a beautifully dressed woman in embroidered silks, golden hairpins swaying delicately with every movement. She clung to his arm, her eyes reddened with restrained tears, looking fragile enough to collapse in the next breeze. Helena Williams. The standard White Lotus type. Her name, appearance, and fake innocence, everything about her screamed copy-pasted third wheel from every cliché melodrama. Several maids and elderly servants stood to my left and right, watching me with varying expressions. Some looked openly delighted by my misery, others pretended concern, while a few were simply there to enjoy the spectacle. And then there was a child. Arthur Blackthorne, the heroine's son. A boy around 10 years old, dressed in a brocade robe. He looked healthy and adorable, clutching Helena's hand while staring up at her with complete admiration. Helena lowered her head and gently stroked his hair as though he were a priceless treasure. The child's eyes lit up immediately. Then he turned toward me. "Father, I like Aunt Helena. Mother is a vicious woman." At those words, Richard's expression softened slightly, even the corners of his lips lifting in faint approval. "You're a sensible child." Helena crouched down and hugged the boy, her voice trembling emotionally. "Arthur, don't blame your mother. She only loves you and your father too much." The child nodded seriously. "I don't blame Mother. I hate Mother." The familiar mechanical voice exploded inside my head. Key plot point detected, parent-child estrangement. System recommendation, you must display complete heartbreak. Crying is encouraged to improve audience immersion. My knees throbbed with pain as I knelt there listening to this absurd performance. And suddenly, I laughed. Not a bitter laugh. Not a cold laugh. But the kind of uncontrollable laughter that bursts out when something is so utterly ridiculous you can no longer endure it. Richard's gaze darkened. "What are you laughing at?" I pushed myself upright. My stiff knees cracked sharply like rusted machinery forced back into motion after years of disuse. I had been kneeling too long, my legs were numb and heavy as stone. One of the old servant women gasped in horror. "Crown Princess, how dare you stand? The Crown Prince ordered you to remain kneeling." I ignored her completely. Instead, I slid a hand into my sleeve. Since I had transmigrated, surely the system would give me some sort of cheat ability. My fingertips brushed against a cold familiar metal. A scalpel. The instant I felt it, I smiled. Perfect. Time to hunt. I tightened my grip on the handle and moved toward the unsuspecting man. He remained seated, his eyes filled with disdainful amusement, as though he were watching an insect struggle before death. "What? Finally realized your mistake? Adeline, had you honestly reflected upon your sins, perhaps this prince might have considered showing mercy." I stepped directly in front of him and placed my left hand onto his shoulder. For the first time, surprise flickered across his face. Then my right hand slid out from my sleeve. The scalpel caught the candlelight in a sharp flash. I knew exactly where to aim. One swift and precise strike to the side of the neck where the pulse was strongest. Clean angle, enough force, no hesitation. Clearly a fatal movement. Warm blood exploded across my face in an instant. Strangely familiar. It reminded me of the operating room, except this time there were no nurses, no gauze, no suction equipment waiting beside me. Richard's eyes widened in horror as more blood sprayed everywhere. His mouth opened as a wet gurgling sound escaped his throat, as though he wanted to speak but no longer could. He tried to clutch his neck, but his arm lost strength halfway. As he struggled to breathe, more blood splattered across his crown princess, secondary consort, and young son. Then he collapsed from the chair onto the floor. He twitched twice. Then stopped moving. Even in death, his eyes remained wide open. Silence swallowed the dungeon. For 10 seconds, nobody moved. The room was so quiet that only the slow drip of blood from the chair to the floor could be heard. Then Helena screamed. The scream was high-pitched and piercing, like a slaughtered animal. She staggered backward, her skirt tangling around her feet before she collapsed to the ground. Still screaming, she scrambled away on her hands and feet. The maids and old servants froze as if struck in place. Some trembled violently, others fell to their knees, and a few tried to flee, only for their legs to give out beneath them. I straightened and wiped the blood from my face. What a pity, my clothes were ruined. Blood still dripped from the scalpel in slow drops, blooming into small red stains on the stone floor. An electronic voice exploded in my mind. Warning! Warning! Richard Blackthorne is the male lead, the core of this world. His death will cause the collapse of the plot. Host, cease immediately. I ignored it and bolted the door to prevent anyone from escaping. Next, I walked toward Helena. She looked like an overturned turtle, her skirt tangled around her legs. Tears streaked through her ruined makeup as her lips trembled, unable to form words. I violently grabbed her hair and spat. I bet you didn't see it coming, did you? You're crazy, she finally managed to say. How dare you kill the crown prince? Guards! Someone help, Adeline has gone mad. No one came. The dungeon was hidden in the deepest part of the back courtyard, separated by multiple layers of corridors. Moreover, Richard had given strict orders, no one was to disturb them while the crown princess paid for her sins, so even if someone screamed, no one would hear. And even if someone heard, no one would come. Speak, I said, tapping her lips lightly with the blade. How many days did you keep me kneeling? Helena trembled violently as she shook her head, her hairpins slipping loose one by one. It wasn't me. It was the crown prince's order. How many days? I asked coldly once more, this time drawing a little blood from her lips. 3 days. Helena finally answered, tears and snot running down her face. Crown princess, please forgive me. It really was the crown prince's order. The scalpel sliced across Helena's face twice before making one final cut across her throat. 3 deep, gaping wounds in exchange for 3 days of kneeling without food or water. Blood surged out as she froze, eyes wide, lips moving soundlessly, perhaps begging, perhaps cursing, perhaps trying to speak her final words. I didn't listen. I stood and walked toward the remaining maids and servants. The system's voice had already broken, crackling like a damaged speaker. Host, you're insane. You killed the second female lead too. The plot line is completely destroyed. What are the audience supposed to watch now? Who are you going to kill next? I ignored it once again and stopped in front of an old servant. She trembled violently, collapsing to her knees and repeatedly knocking her forehead against the floor. Crown princess, please have mercy. This servant knows nothing. It was consort Helena. What did she make you do? She told me not to bring you food or water. She said that if you suffered for a few days, you would learn your lesson, and if you fainted or got sick, she told me to drag you to the back courtyard and leave you there. I nodded, then granted her a swift death. The next maid was sobbing uncontrollably. I didn't do anything. I only followed orders. What did you do? I merely failed to prepare fresh clothes, shoes, and bedding for your stay here. I gave her a quick end. Next, a fat servant collapsed, unable to stand, wheezing for breath. I frowned when I recognized her. She was the servant who constantly stole from the original heroine. I killed her without wasting another word. Another young maid lay motionless on the ground, pretending to be dead. I kicked her once. She sprang up screaming and tried to run. She didn't make it far. I delivered a single fatal strike. The system's voice cracked further, almost breaking entirely. Host, I beg you. In the original plot, these people were all meant to receive retribution later. Helena would be stripped of her status and wealth, thrown into the dungeon, and left to suffer until death. The old servants would be tortured to death, while the young maids would be violated by countless soldiers until they died. I pulled the scalpel from the last servant and wiped the blood off her clothes before asking mockingly, "What about Richard and Arthur? What kind of retribution did they receive in the original plot?" The system responded cautiously. After avenging the heroine's suffering and death, they would cry at her grave for 3 days and nights. Afterward, they would suffer from severe insomnia and relentless nightmares caused by overwhelming guilt and regret. I rolled my eyes. So many people suffered and died because of them, yet they remained completely untouched. If anyone should truly pay for the heroine's suffering and death, it should be the scumbag husband and the ungrateful son. I clicked my tongue and continued. How tragic. The original heroine suffered terribly and lost her life, while the father and son only lost sleep and tears. "Host, you need to calm down," the system said cautiously, as if speaking to a bomb ready to detonate. "There's only one left. You can't kill him. He's a key character, the one responsible for all the tearjerker scenes later." I smirked and said nonchalantly, "Oh, right. There's still one left. Thanks for the reminder." Arthur Blackthorne, the spoiled brat son. He stood frozen among the corpses scattered across the floor, blood speckling his face from where his father had been struck down moments earlier. Helena, the maids, and the servants had tried to flee, but his formerly docile mother had dealt with them one by one. From beginning to end, he couldn't move at all. Fear and disbelief rooted him to the ground. When I walked toward him, he finally managed to move, stumbling backward several steps until his back hit the wall. No further retreat. No escape. He tilted his head up to look at me, eyes wide and lashes trembling with tears, his face and lips drained of all color. The system once again begged like a desperate child. "Host, please, you can't kill him. He's one of the highlights of the story. The audience loves him." I acted as though I hadn't heard anything. Looking him straight in the eyes, I asked calmly, "What was your name again?" "Arthur Blackthorne." "Do you know who I am?" He nodded slightly. "My mother." "Then why did you speak up for Helena earlier?" He pressed his lips together and said nothing. I crouched down so we were eye level. He was neat and fair-faced. He bore a striking resemblance to the original host, similar eyes, nose, and even lips. But something about his gaze was off. Too calm, too observant, too aware, too calculating, too used to reading people to get what he wanted. "Go on," I said, tapping his cheek lightly with the blade's edge. "Explain. Let me hear your excuse. I'll consider it." His gaze fixed on the scalpel. His throat bobbed. Then he spoke. "Because father doesn't like you." He said it plainly, as if stating a fact. "Aunt Helena is favored. If I speak for her, father will like me." I raised a brow. "So you're siding with whoever has advantage?" He didn't understand the phrase at first, but he still nodded. I said flatly, "You know I'm your real mother, and yet you still help others bully me." He lowered his head for a moment, then looked up again. There was no guilt in his eyes, only calculation. "Father doesn't like you. If I help you, father won't like me either. Then no one in this house will love or care about me." The system's voice cut in. Key line detected. Sympathetic comment protocol engaged. Comments flashed through my mind. "Poor child, he just wants to be loved. This is so tragic, he's innocent. Don't hurt the poor little man." I ignored it and said quietly, "You're extremely clever." His expression shifted slightly, as if expecting approval. I looked into his eyes. Clear, calm, almost too clean. Not out of innocence, but pure manipulation. A child raised in this place learned the first rule of survival: worship the powerful, trample the weak. And the sad part is, people still called that innocence. I laughed softly. "Do you think I won't kill you just because you're my son?" He froze. Then shook his head. "No." Then, hesitantly, "I'm young. I can still change." I straightened. My knee cracked from the movement. "Change?" I repeated. A flicker of hope appeared in his eyes. "Yes, I can change," he said again, more firmly this time, as if convincing himself. I raised my hand. The scalpel entered his chest. The flicker of hope on his face faded instantly. His eyes lowered slowly to the blade, then back to me. His lips moved, but no sound came out. His body slumped against the wall like a broken puppet. Blood spread across his embroidered robe, staining the cloud pattern until it was unrecognizable, then dripped onto the stone floor, merging with the pool already there. "Are you insane?" the system screamed. "That's your biological son." I wiped the blade clean on his clothing. "A child who shifts with the wind and recognizes no kin. What use is he to me? He would have grown up to be a disaster anyway. Today he sells his parents, tomorrow he sells everything else. But in the plot, he suffers. He generates huge traffic points. He's a major traffic trigger, and you killed him too." I paused slightly. "Traffic points? Traffic trigger? What do you mean?" The system's voice suddenly turned guilty, like a child who had accidentally let something slip. "It's the viewership stats in the real world. The higher they are, the more points I gain. With enough points, I can level up." I slowly straightened. "So you bring hosts into transmigration worlds just to harvest traffic?" "Not really," the system replied, sounding uncertain. "We're certified and licensed. Every department has performance targets. We only select people who strongly react to unresolved narratives." "How did the previous hosts handle it?" "They followed the plot obediently, enduring abuse, waiting out the required timeline, then leaving with huge rewards. There was one host who performed exceptionally well. She endured extreme physical, mental, and emotional abuse before ultimately being killed by the male lead at the end. Readers cried, cursed, and engaged. Traffic poured in. The reactions were overwhelming, and that month broke all departmental records." I glanced at the corpses scattered across the ground, then at the scalpel in my hand. "So if the host kill like this, the traffic disappears?" "Of course," the system answered. "If the male lead dies, there's no wife-chasing challenge. If the son dies, there's no betrayal and disappointment plot. If the second female lead dies, there's no abuse and struggle arc. Without them, there are no traffic points. My performance score will collapse, and I'll be sent back for forced dismantling and reconfiguration." I was silent for 2 seconds. "You said the higher the traffic, the higher the level." "Yes." "Then check it now. What's the traffic count?" The system froze like it had crashed. 3 seconds of silence. Then it suddenly erupted with excited electronic noise. "Wait, this data," it exploded. "Higher than all previous hosts combined and still rising. The comment section is going crazy. The servers can barely handle it." The system's voice trembled with disbelief. I raised an eyebrow. "What exactly is surprising about this?" The system stammered. "But this doesn't make sense. Aren't viewers supposed to prefer tragic romance stories? Why would they like this instead?" I shrugged and said flatly, "Maybe, deep down, they're already sick and tired of those stupid plotlines. And I think you should explore other genres." The system went silent again, then suddenly cheered. "Host, I leveled up and even jumped 6 levels at once. I reached the highest tier thanks to you." "Sounds good." I decided to leave before anyone discovered what happened in this place, but I remembered something very important. "This world is finished, right?" "Yes, host. According to regulations, you can apply for a reward. Your traffic points are off the charts, you qualify for the highest tier reward." I got excited. "What kind of reward?" "Since it's the highest tier reward, you can have anything you want: peerless martial arts, mind reading, future prediction, spatial rings, divine weapons, or return to your original world." "Like I said, anything you want." "Now that you mention it, I really do have a wish." "What wish?" "I want to return to my original world with a stunning face, a drop-dead gorgeous body, a genius mind, and a large sum of money, say, $500 billion in several banks under my name, without anyone questioning it." She declared it, then smiled slyly. The system paused, as if considering the weight of her request before saying, "Granted." Adeline Banes returned to her original world reborn in every way that mattered: striking beauty that turned heads without effort, a flawless figure, a genius mind, and immense wealth beyond conventional limits. The first thing she did was quit her job, not in hesitation, but in complete finality. Then she built her own hospital. It started as a bold, almost reckless project: land purchased outright, construction approved without delay, funding that never seemed to run dry. But it quickly became something else entirely, a medical institution that drew attention from across the country. She recruited aggressively and selectively. The best surgeons from top hospitals, brilliant but overlooked doctors, skilled nurses who had been underpaid and overworked elsewhere. She offered them what others refused to: exceptional salaries, comprehensive benefits, research funding, and working conditions designed for excellence instead of burnout. The result was predictable. Her hospital rose quickly in reputation, becoming both trusted and respected in the medical field. She still practiced medicine, but only when she wanted to: select cases, complex surgeries, rare conditions that interested her enough to step into the operating room. Most of her time, however, was spent elsewhere. She managed the hospital with quiet precision, making decisions that shaped its growth. She appeared in short-form medical advisory videos that went viral, breaking down complex health issues with unnerving clarity and competence, turning her into a respected doctor and an unexpected public figure. And when she wasn't doing that, she was traveling, attending international medical conferences, exchanging ideas with leading experts, and quietly expanding her influence across global medical circles. She had become something no one in her past world would have recognized at first glance. A woman who survived, thrived, and controlled the world. If this story captivated you, leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more stories like this.